Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. All right, back with me on the show, Kristine Carlson, the co-author of the beloved New York Times bestselling Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series. You have definitely heard of one of these books in your lifetime and has absolutely touched millions of lives with her wisdom and compassion. She's got over 25 million copies sold worldwide. And her late husband became a beacon for those seeking peace and purpose, and she has continued that journey. You can go visit Elle Russ Show episode number 46. Kristine came on and spoke about this heartbreak and losing her husband and moving forward in a book, wonderful book, a memoir called Heartbreak Open, a true story of coming alive again after profound loss. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Elle. So good to see you.
So how's that journey been going? The last time we talked, I know you said you were like, hey, I've been way beyond it. I'm dating. I'm navigating this new world. How's that feeling after your memoir came out? I mean, it was wonderful, critically acclaimed.
Oh yeah. Well, my life is just continually to move forward, and I think that's what's beautiful after you heal from grief and loss. For many people, I find that you have to give yourself permission to live again, permission to love again, and permission to move forward, which is definitely, when I work with women, that's definitely what I feel like they come to me for. Yeah,
Is that the permission? It's almost like outsourcing the permission, feeling like they might need someone to tell them it's okay. Is that what you mean?
I think that they do. I think there's a lot of guilt associated with loss, and I think that people need examples of other people that have gone through their process of healing and go ahead and live, because that's just definitely been a theme I've noticed over the years with the many women that come on retreat with me, for many reasons. Even when they've gone through a divorce, sometimes people that go through divorce, they also feel like that's a failure of some kind, and they don't want to do it again, because they're afraid of more failure. And so I think that one of the things that I always share with women is that, your life is really short. And if you've lost somebody you love, then you know how short it can be. And you don't have, you have to make the most of this life because it's your life. And you don't have to feel bad about that. You don't have to feel guilty about moving forward. And I always say you don't move on from the one that you lost, that you loved. You just carry them with you. And even into your new relationships, like you carry that person into everything you do in a lot of ways and still have your own life and still live your own life. So, yeah.
I've spoke with a woman recently who came on to just a free workshop, but she was struggling because her husband had died. And what do you say to that, right? It's just, it's awful. There's nothing like, well, there'll be a bright shining light. It's tough to talk about it. But one of the things I did suggest was looking you up, looking interviews up. That's a great suggestion. Going to people who've already written books, who have mourned publicly about it, gone through it. You don't even have to read the books, right? You can go find an interview first to see if maybe this is your person. But talking to people who've gone through it is kind of the only way to go, right? It's like we just experienced all of these traumatic fires here, and fire victims want to talk to other fire victims. Like,
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a classic situation. So if you're out there and you're suffering and you don't know where to go, look up Kristine's work and her book, Heartbroken Open, but also just Google interviews with her as well, and just get as much as you can healing from the people that have already healed. So
I think, don't we want to get advice from people who have gone through something that we're going through, not from people who haven't, right? Like you wouldn't want to get advice on how to recover from a fire from somebody who's never had that kind of loss. So it's the same thing with any kind of loss. We want to know that there's somebody that's walked that path before us, before we're willing to take advice from them.
So throughout your whole work, I mean, there are so many don't sweat the small stuff, right? Don't sweat the small stuff in love. There's almost, no topic that hasn't been covered here. There's so much there to help people thrive and sort of change their mindset. But let's talk about this 365 daily reflections you have, because this is coming from the best love wisdom in all of these series. So tell us a little bit about this, because I think right now, and the world, a lot of people are going through some struggles, and I feel like a daily consistent practice, a reminder, and even if that's just turning a page, right? So tell us about this 365 uh, compilation.
Well, our publisher came to me and they wanted to start a day by day series with some of their authors that had many books with them. And so, of course, they thought of the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. So, what they did was they took from about 4 or 5 of the books, they took a compilation, meaning several chapters from each book, and they edited them down so that they would just be digestible to 1 page a day. And I loved it because I thought, with the busy lives that we're living today, even busier than when Don't Sweat the Small Stuff first came out in 1997, it was like a perfect way to add some juice to the series and just, also to show people how relevant these practices are today, that they're really timeless. It's timeless wisdom. And it's also timeless wisdom that the personal development field has really built off of, over the years, which is what happens. You've got your foundational Wayne Dyers of the world and Richard Carlsons of the world. And then everyone builds off of that and people come up with new things. And there's been so much science and research that actually really proves like all of these ideas in Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and Don't Sweat the Small Stuff Every Day are practical, but they're also realized as scientifically proven that they work, especially the gratitude practices and just many of the things. I'm so proud of Richard in that he was really such a pioneer in the field of psychology. And of course, wasn't recognized as that upon his death necessarily, although definitely considered a guru of happiness in the Western world. He is now recognized, or should be recognized, as a pioneer because he was on to so many things that are so popular today.
I was gonna, on that note, did he die before realizing that studies came out about a lot of the things he was talking about? Because I mean, I'm imagining this time frame, and I'm thinking, I don't think those studies on gratitude came out. I don't know.
No, he did. The happiness research has all been the last 10 years. Yeah, Sean Acor has done a lot of happiness research. Sean Acor from Harvard and his wife Michelle Gillan and many, many researchers. But Richard was really in it before mindfulness was truly a thing. I mean, he of course knew what mindfulness was. But it wasn't like the thing it is today. It wasn't this broad field, or positive psychology, the term wasn't out there the way it is today, or even 10 years, even before he died. So I think it's very powerful that he was talking in those terms and writing about those things.
Very
30 years,
prophetic in
30
a
years
way,
ago.
based on
Yeah.
the studies that later, I mean, he would probably be so happy, right, to know that
Oh,
things are
totally.
getting
Yeah.
stamped in studies.
Yeah. I even think even
Christy,
like
what
people,
about,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. I think even the things that people have considered woo-woo, are no longer considered woo-woo because they're scientifically proven. And I think that's beautiful, that science and spirituality, science and mental health and wellness have come together the way they have over the years.
I would imagine, but I could be wrong, and I'm just curious. Did your did your husband have an influence or talk about sort of the perspectives of some of the ancient Greek philosophers? I can only imagine that might have really influenced him in some way in terms of mindset, or that would have been a part of his studies and appreciation. But that's just a random one for me because I have a degree in philosophy, and I'm always curious. And I wonder, because of a lot of what he says, this is coming from sometimes the ancient Greeks kind of sparking some of these
Totally.
ideas. Yeah.
Totally. Well, Richard was an avid reader. I mean, he read about a book a week his whole adult life. So he was an avid studier of philosophy and religion and the field of spirituality. So it wouldn't surprise me. I can't say for certain because, of course, I'm not as avid of a reader as he was. I read, but not
52
like he
books
did.
a year is a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah, he was always reading every spare moment he got, and he just loved it. He loved to write and he loved to read. He loved to learn and he loved philosophy. So yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
I wish that desire and curiosity upon everyone, right? That desire to learn and be curious about everything. Let's talk about some of your favorites from 365, these reflections, but also what's your practice? Are you doing the 365? Do you pick up one of the small stuff books every day and just turn to a page? Like,
Well,
what's
I don't. I actually read it for for the Audible book, so
you already got it?
I don't, but I do pick it up. And of course, I have turned down some of the pages that are my favorites. One of the things that he says in one of these chapters is consider that wisdom may even be more important than IQ. And of course, that speaks to emotional intelligence, right? That, that certainly it's important to have both, but um, our philosophy has always been that, you know, actually having some space between your thinking, your thoughts is actually a good thing. It's like having that spaciousness versus frenetic thinking allows you to be a much more responsive person versus reactive person. So, and the idea that wisdom is something that is emotional intelligence. It's something that is upon reflection. It's something about insight and that light switch that goes off in your inner world that creates wisdom. It's those aha moments that we love having when we have them. Yeah, so I love that. I love that he points to that. I
I
love,
love that one on wisdom. So it's just yeah, that one is interesting. I've always said I would rather take someone who's street smart and has emotional intelligence over someone with like a degree from somewhere if they were lacking those things. I mean, true experience really is wisdom, right? Like you don't even learn about another culture fully until you go visit that country, let's say, and you're immersed in it. And so yeah, I love that. I love that. And also I think that's a nice backhanded way, even though it's not an intention of giving a little bit more grace and maybe some credit to people that perhaps don't have some degrees behind their name, because there's a lot of really highly emotionally intelligent people out there that we can learn from.
yeah, absolutely. Another of my favorites is tell three people today how much you love them. That's a practice. And, I mean, even the people like that are your friends, people that you might not always say, I love you, we tend to say, love you to our kids on an ongoing basis and so forth. Or maybe you don't. Maybe that's one of the three people you could say, I love you to today. But I think really calling attention to that is super powerful. I know Richard, he wrote me this incredible letter on our 18th wedding anniversary, and he answered the question posed by Stephen Levine: if you had an hour to live, and you could make one phone call, who would it be to? What would you say, and why are you waiting? And
Mm.
it was just this incredible love letter. It was like 37 pages long that he presented to me on our 18th wedding anniversary. And it was really just all the love that he had for me and the girls and what he would say to us in his final hour. Now he wrote that 3 years before he died. And you can imagine upon his death how I scrambled to find that letter. And it gave me such comfort to have that letter. And I think that's what we underestimate about telling people we love on an ongoing basis and writing those special notes in those letters is we don't know when our last day is going to come or when theirs is. And if we don't say those things and we leave them unsaid, and that's a dangling feeling. I just was with a widow recently, and her husband had a diagnosis of cancer, and she thought she had months with him, and they just they weren't in the place of talking about all these things, that life yet. And he died suddenly from something else, like probably a pulmonary embolism or something. It was so quick. And her biggest thing was, I just wish that I had said the things I wanted to say because I thought I had more time. And even in that circumstance, she thought she had more time. So I think we can never learn that lesson too soon, that we need to say those things and we need to not put off, especially those emotional things that attach us to the people we love, that we know will comfort them in their time of need or us in ours.
I don't know if this has been the same experience for you, but I think I'm 51, but entering into my 40s, I noticed that, friends, even guys, guy friends, buddies, had forever, we all started kind of being like, love you. I don't know. Maybe it's more comfortable in this world. And then I see my 15-year-old stepson out there, and they'll write letters to, and these kids are like alpha baseball playing kids, and they're like, love you, love you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. Of course, we didn't grow up at all in an era where a boy would be able to go love you. It's like, so I love that so much. And also, we're so quick to, like, I'm so quick to tell my mother, how much I love her, or my fiance, et cetera, whatever. But we have these thoughts about our friends and we don't express. And I'm always trying to get people, like, the next time you're thinking about your friend, like, damn, kick ass, that was really great. You got to call them and tell them, like, do you know how proud you should be of yourself?
Yeah.
Right? It's weird that we don't do that as much with friends as we put the attention on making sure we tell our children this and all of these kind of things. So I love that. And I love that it goes for absolutely consider friends to be a part of this. If you haven't told your best friend or your buddies recently how much they mean to you, now's the time.
Yeah, I do too. Oftentimes when I end my conversations with my dearest friends, we say, love you, talk to you later, love you.
I love that.
I know, it's sweet.
All right. So, what are some other juicy ones? These are all really great reminders so far.
Well, let's see. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Don't keep people waiting.
Oh, this is my pet peeve. So I love this.
So it kind of comes down to, do you really feel like somebody else's time is more precious than your own? And this is a funny one for me and Richard, because our very first date, I kept him waiting. And I wasn't ready, and he was waiting down in the suite of our dorm. And and then I quickly learned that that was one of his pet peeves, not to be kept waiting. And, he told me, he said, I just think, if you keep somebody waiting and you do it consistently, you just don't respect their time. And I learned that from him. And so consequently, I'm almost never late now. I like to be 5 minutes early places. Every once in a while till lunch or something, I might walk in 5 minutes late if it's a parking issue. And I always text the person, hey, I'm running 5 minutes late, because I
There you
know they'll
go.
be sitting there waiting. So that's a really powerful one. And, you know,
This is so powerful to also be taken seriously. One of the advice I give to new people, like out of college, if they're starting in the corporate world and working for other people, I'm like, you show up to that office as early as it opens. Show up, be the first one there. You're going to get all your stuff done, and people are rolling in and having their coffee, and you're already going, and it says a lot. And then I have a thing in my book about the lateness being a pet peeve. I had a friend where we met equidistance to a hiking trail, 2 miles for her, 2 miles for me. And she was always 15, 20 minutes late. And so I finally
oh,
had this, yeah. And so finally I had this discussion with her. I said, hey, let me ask you something. If you had a meeting with Steven Spielberg, would you be late? And she's like, well, and I go, no, 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 because see, I treat everybody like they are whoever but I just use Steven Spielberg because we live in LA and it's Hollywood and she's a producer. But no, she wouldn't be late to Steven Spielberg. Now, after that, she got the hint. She wasn't late. And then if she was going to be, she did exactly what you said, which is the right thing to do. Give a heads up.
yeah.
Give a heads up. It's just so disrespectful when people are continually late. And it really says something about you as well. And I don't know that it's a shining beacon to anyone else as well. So I love that one. And I love that that was your husband's pet peeve. That's great.
Yeah. And let's see. Oh, well, of course, learn to live in the present moment. I
Yeah.
mean,
How do you do that, Kristine?
yeah,
Tell everyone how
yeah.
you do that.
Well, it's funny because, there's an awful lot of talk about living in the present moment. And yet, all the ancient, like the Buddhists and the Hindus and sort of the ancient religions, they really point to, this is where the miracles happen. This is where, life really happens, is in the present moment. So you have to really look at when you're not present, and you think about like those times when you're in the car and your mind is wandering. Like, have you ever like been driving and then wondered how you got from the point you are to the point
Frightening,
like
isn't
you're
it?
like, I know, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not paying any
Like
attention.
how I could have died. What just happened? Yeah.
Yeah, what just happened? How did I get here? But there's those times where you really realize that you're not present. And then you have to ask yourself, well, if I want to be present, how do I practice that? And the Buddhists talk a lot about the breath, that bring your attention back to your breath. And that's the easiest way. That's the sort of guardrail to the present moment, is because it's in your body. It's every moment. You're always breathing. It's kind of interesting because it's also very invisible for us to breathe. We don't think about that we're not breathing until we hold our breath. And then we realize, oh yeah, breathing is very invisible to us. So that's the practice, is kind of constantly keeping your attention in the present moment. And somebody might say, well, what's in it for me to do that? Well, what's in it for you is that you have the ability to tune into a lot more frequency of nuance in the present moment. And the nuances, I like to say, like if you want like the fun stuff to happen in life and you want to notice you got to be present for it. So like I always have all these kismet things happening. A great example, a great story I have is a couple of years after Richard died, I was traveling with my girls, and we were going to Eugene, Oregon, coming home from Eugene, Oregon, to San Francisco. So it was a short flight, very short commuter flight. And we got up to the ticket agent and we asked the ticket, or we're getting our seats. And the ticket agent said, oh, you guys aren't seated together. Would you like to be seated together? And I remember saying, oh, no, it's okay. My kids they don't care. But then he seated us together, just on his own. He just said, oh, I put you together because I feel like you should be traveling together. And so we got on the plane and the seat was open next to me, and the girls sat down. They were in the aisle and the window next to me. And this man walked up. Now, he walked up and he stood before me, and I got this weird chill. Like I literally got a chill, went up and down my spine. And I felt it. And then my girls started to giggle. And I thought, that's weird. They're not giggling age. They're like, they're 19 and 16, they're not giggling age. And then I got up and he sat down. I had the strongest feeling like I needed to talk to this man. Well, he pulled his laptop out. I tried to say hello. He pulled his laptop out. So cueing me that, he's going to work. And so of course I respected it, respected that. I backed off. I didn't try and talk to him after that. But then on the descent of the flight, I still had that strong feeling. Because of that strong feeling, I struck up a conversation with him as he put his laptop away. And I asked him if it was a work day for him. And he said, oh, yeah, sorry, I have a meeting later. I'm sorry, I would have loved to have chatted with you. And I'm thinking, oh, it's okay, because we're going to chat now. And so I said, well, oh, no, that's all right. And he said, what about you? Is it a work day for you? I noticed you have your computer with you too. And I said, well, technically every day is a work day for me. I'm a writer. And he said, oh, have you been published? And I said, well, yeah, I have, but you might be more familiar with my late husband, Dr. Richard Carlson. He wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And the man just kind of sat back in his chair and he got visibly almost shaken. And I said, what? And he didn't look directly at me. He just was like kind of just really shaken. I said, what? Did you know him? And he said, no, I didn't know him, not directly. And I said, well, what? And he goes, well, did he die on a flight to JFK a little over 2 years ago? And I said, well, yeah, how did you know it was JFK? That wasn't published. And he said, well, because I was seated directly behind him on that flight. I was the first to assist, and I helped lift his body out of the seat. And I just remember
Yes. I remember that story. Yeah, that story is so powerful.
Yeah, I just remember just saying to him, are you kidding me? Like, what are the chances of this? And he was like, no, there's no chances of this. This was one of those divine, guided incidences. But I tell you that story because when I talk about nuance in the present moment, had I not been really present, I would have missed that whole feeling that I had to talk to this man. I would have missed that because I would have been busy doing other things and preoccupied. Now, and the guy who was at the ticket counter, if he hadn't been really present, he would have missed rearranging our seats. We would have had that conversation. So there's a lot of amazing miracles that happen when you're very present, and you have to be present for them to happen. And this is the fun stuff of life. This is where the joy happens. It's
I
hard.
like that you followed your gut there. You weren't like, "Oh,
Yeah.
whatever." You're like, "No, no, no. I gotta like something's telling me just talk, open up a convo with this dude, and look where it." I mean, I love that, and I love that it came from that nuance of being present. I love
Yeah.
that story too. I bet that was. Um, did you tell him later, like, "Oh my God, I had this vibe. I wanted to talk to you." Actually, like
No,
he wasn't aware of it.
I never reached out to him again. He gave me his card, and at that time in my life, I was sort of all about moving forward, and
Get it?
I wanted to leave that the way it was, because that's how I thought it was meant to be. So I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I needed to know anything more from him. And so I never contacted him after that, and I didn't have any more conversation with him about it. It was just like a woe for both of us.
I mean, it must have been interesting for him too to have been on that flight, been a part of that thing, but then to connect it later to you. And I'm sure he walked away feeling some kind of way about at least being able to share something with you about it.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure.
he always wanted to tell me that my husband died peacefully, that he had a very peaceful expression on his face.
Oh,
And so he wanted to tell me that. And I think it was really healing for him to see that we were okay.
yeah.
Because Richard was a young man, and he was clearly a young man when he died. So I think for anybody there, it was probably very traumatic, like to know, and then to find out who he was, and just it was a very public thing in a lot of ways, and yet I got no information from the airline about it. So I didn't receive any information about his death. So for me, it was just incredibly healing.
Oh, that's such a good one. So yeah, nuances and being present. That was the last one we just talked about. Wow. Yeah, you're opening up yourself up to more potentials in that environment, aren't you? Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then of course I love, let's see. There's some real practical ones. Like have a chosen charity, like
Yeah.
have your pet charity. That's an easy one. Argue for your limitations and they're yours. That's a great one too.
Was
That's
that
all.
your husband's quote or that's someone's that's
No,
a
that's his.
is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's his.
I love it because
Argue
I've
for
heard
your
that one for years
limitations
and
and
didn't
they're
know where it came
yours.
from.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Um, that's what he said right here.
On that note, let's talk about that because as you've heard the catchphrase limiting beliefs, right? When we talk about mindset, and you can be looking for these restrictive or limiting beliefs, but yet there's the catch 22 of not continuing searching for the limiting beliefs because then that's the focus, right?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think limiting beliefs are something that you can identify, pretty quickly, actually. I mean, by just what is your attitude saying about you, I think the value in it is just to identify them and realize that they're made up by you, that I think beliefs are powerful, but it's the ones that are invisible that are having the most power over us. So maybe the value is just bringing them forward, both the positive ones. I wouldn't just stick with the limiting ones. I'd also talk about what are the empowering beliefs you have, because we have both. And people are wired and geared. You've got limiting beliefs because you had things happen in your childhood, that maybe taught you about, oh, I need to be afraid of that because that happened once. And, so those are the kinds of things that, you want to heal, and you want to, move forward on. But don't miss also the good, the powerful beliefs that you have about yourself. I think they hold just as much weight. I think the limiting beliefs are um, perhaps the most detrimental, because you could become a victim of anything, and you kind of want to turn the idea of being a victim around and turn yourself into more of a hero, because it just is more empowering. You're going to live a more empowered life if you don't live at the effect of your circumstances, and so those kinds of limiting beliefs. But you're right. You don't want to get lost in the story either. You want to
Yeah, or
make
you
it
need to
such a good,
counteract it with the good stuff because there's probably a lot of beliefs that are serving you, a lot of
yeah.
behaviors that have helped, and you've got to give yourself some street cred, go through the positives as well. It's like, when you ask somebody like, well, what do you want in a relationship? Like, well, I don't want a cheater. I don't, you're like, okay, I'm hearing all the don'ts, right? Um, and you mentioned the word victim. I think sometimes, well, I guess I just want to throw out there that what that is usually a mindset of everything's happening to you, right?
It's
You're
supporting.
feeling like everything is against me or it's happening to me and you have no control. So can you speak to the people that might be in a little bit of a victim state right now with something in their life and need to
Well,
pull
like the
themselves up?
fires that you're all living
Yeah.
through in Southern California. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't feel victimized when they see their house and every belonging they ever had in rubble. That's just going to be normal and natural. We're all going to feel victim of that. And for a while, you are a victim. But I think if you stay in that place, then you don't have a chance of really doing what you need to do and take action and be positive. I don't, I have a lot of empathy for people who go through loss of any kind. And a lot of empathy for people who have lost their homes because home is so sacred. But again, on an ongoing basis, that's okay because we vacillate back and forth, but you definitely want to also take powerful action, and you, in order to do that, you can't just sit in your pity party. You've got to actually sit up and say, all right, this is here. This is what I have. Now what do I do about it? How can I change this? What are my steps I have to take to make this situation better? And I think no matter who you are and what you're going through, that you there is a choice. And like I said, and I said just a minute ago, we do go back and forth. It's not like a choice you make once. It's kind of a choice you have to make when your attitude is in the dumps. You have to sit down and say and have a talk with yourself. Like, how is this serving you? How is this narrative serving you? And if you have that talk and answer is it's not serving me very well, well, then you kind of have to shift your mindset and you have to try to think about what can you do that's a positive step forward. What can you do versus what you can't do. And I think, it speaks to what you're also just speaking of. I mean, people are they're very good at identifying sometimes what they don't want, but they're not as good sometimes at identifying what they do want. And I think if you're one of those kinds of people, then that's the practice, that's the practice of looking at your life and saying, what can I do? How can I move forward? What is one small step I can take today that's actually going to bring me closer to what I dream of, what I most desire? What is the outcome I really want to see happen in my life? And again, speaking to being a victim versus a victor, it goes back to that these things they happen to you, but they also happen for you. And sometimes it takes longer to find the meaning of why things happen. And you can totally give yourself that space. But someday you'll look back and you'll say, if you have that mindset, you'll say, wow, like for me, it's like, wow, I lost the love of my life, a man I cherished and adored and meant everything to me. But today, my life is pretty darn good, and I am serving in ways I never dreamed possible when I was married to him and in life with him. So there is light at the end, and there's a shining light, but it might take a while to get there and for you to see it, and that's okay.
Yeah, I always say some of the best gifts in life come wrapped in poop, and sometimes it takes a minute. And, some of the worst things that have ever happened to me have been the best things that have ever happened to me that to this day I wouldn't take back. And that's why you hear people that are like, breast cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And most people are like, what? I would,
What?
no, I get it. I get it. I've been through enough of those to know now if something bad happens, I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. This is better be good. I wonder, and this is before we get maybe to a couple more of these and then closing it up, I wanted to ask you just, I don't know if anyone's asked you this, it's a little indirect, but, you know, you've been with this guy very young. He's this psychology maverick, a wonderful teacher. Not to say he didn't learn from you, but my gosh, what okay, he's probably guiding you along the way here with mindset. And I guess you can't do hindsight because if you've always been in this mindset stuff, but then what has life been like? Have you and your husband, when he was around, did you guys always coach all your friends and, kids' parents around when they, would it be hard to just did you hold your tongue when people had some negative Nancy thoughts and all that kind of stuff? Or did you offer advice? Like, must have been an interesting position to be in here and then here out there.
Well, interestingly, I mean, a lot of our friends were pretty normal people, and some of them were very evolved people, you know. So we had a rule, and I still have this rule. I don't ever give advice unsolicited. You know,
That's a great.
I keep my mouth shut, whether it's my kids, my friends, you know, if people don't ask, they don't want to know, you know, sometimes that's the best rule to live by. But if somebody asks and they want to know, then you give your best advice. You know, you offer what you have. I think it's very powerful. Just a friend of mine, the other day just called me crying, thanking me for helping her in a situation, a very difficult conversation she had to have. And she just said, I don't think I could have navigated this without you. And I said, well, here's the thing. I mean, when you're sitting on the sideline, it's really it's a little easier to see, you know, or to give you some guidance if you're willing to take it. And I said, you know, kudos to you for actually taking the advice I gave you because a lot of times you'll give advice and it falls on deaf ears. So, you know,
Yep.
kudos to you for actually doing what I suggested. You know, and I think that's the beauty of friendship, isn't it? That's the beauty of having great friends that you trust their wisdom, you know, and when you ask, you know, you can get their best. And I certainly, when I need help, I ask my friends, but I'm very also like everyone else. If I just need to vent or I want to talk about something, I'm not asking for your advice. In fact, I said that to my boyfriend the other day. He said something about something I said or wrote, and I said, hey, I didn't ask for that. I'm not asking what you think, you
I
know?
love that.
And he was like, okay.
That's a great one to preface conversations with. I do this often, even though I have fellow coach friends and all are capable. Uh, One of the ways to avoid stuff like this is, I mean, that one is probably offhand and it's about your book. You didn't think about it. But, any kind of situation where someone's venting to you, I'm always like, just tell people what you need. Call them and go, look, I need to vent for a little bit. I don't want you to turn me around. I need a
Yeah.
witness. And then maybe if I'm ready, I'll ask for advice. Or, hey, I don't need any advice today. I just need someone to be with me here. Give them the chance not to fail you as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Because when I
Yeah. That's
preempt
great
when I
advice.
preface those conversations, my friends are like, got it. I know what she needs and I know what what to hold back or when not to go into advice mode. We're still in vent mode. And so, you can help your friends and family members out with that too by just prefacing these conversations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice.
Let's take a couple of more and then we will wrap it up.
Yeah, they spur some great conversations. I'm just opening it randomly.
Yeah, I love it.
So,
Just like a roulette of the book roulette.
oh, this probably came from Don't Sweat the Small Stuff in Love. Remember, no one can read your mind.
Yeah. That's basically what we're talking of, what we just talked about a little bit. That one reminds me of gifts.
Oh,
I preempted this because, I'm older and relationships, I've learned a lot. So when I met my fiance and we're first together, Valentine's Day, stuff hadn't come up yet. But I said, hey, let's have a conversation because couples have problems with this. And I don't want you to fail. Like, what are your holidays? What do you care about? Let me tell you what I care about, what I expect. How many people, and I'm sure you've seen it throughout the years, couples disappointed because he didn't do the thing you should have done, but you didn't tell him that guys, they're not mind readers, right? So let's get into this point.
well, yeah, maybe gifts isn't your language of love. Maybe it's yours and
Totally.
it's not his. So, you know,
Yep.
I love that book, The Five Love Languages. I think it really
Yep.
speaks to all the different ways that people love each other and we have our main ones that we love each other with. And that's a big deal, you know, because some people really celebrate birthdays and other people don't celebrate birthdays very much, you know? So, or you're right, like, you know, the gift giving. And some people really are great gift givers, and other people are not. They're practical gift givers, you know. They'll give you a blender, and you look at them and go, I don't want a blender from you. That's not romantic.
Yeah, I remember my dad gave my mom towels, but they came in like these huge boxes, and she thought it was going to be a fur coat one year in downtown Chicago or something.
Oh,
And when
God.
she opened it, she was like, "Ah, monogram towels, like so unromantic." But but it's still because I like what you said about the birthdays. I met someone once, and I asked them this question, and they said, "Oh, my birthday, I want a big blowout. I want a huge party." And I was like, "Oh God, see, I wouldn't even do anything like that for my own birthday. That's not how I feel." But it's so good to know that. And like the gift giving thing, again, I might be more inclined, like I'm not a gifts person in my love language. I'm more of, affection and words of appreciation and things like that. So yeah, so that's really important. No one's a mind reader. How else would this apply, or how else has your husband in the past made examples of this situation other than what we've just mentioned?
Well, I think it speaks to especially when you have issues in your marriage or your relationship. I think a lot of times we go about life and we think that people are like us versus understanding that people are not like us, they're like them. They are like they are. They're not like we are. I'm not. I'm a
So
certain
astute.
way, and I think I that's kind of a. I remember having the insight, and I'm not sure how old I was, but I wasn't really very old when I finally had that insight. Maybe my 30s. I realized, oh my God, I think that the world operates the way I operate. No, the world does not operate the way I do. They're different than I am. And so I think that's where that comes from, is just understanding that people see the world through their own lens, and they have this whole inner dialogue and world going on. But when you expect somebody to jump in your inner world, they can't, because it's your inner world. It's private, and especially from your partner. Sometimes my current partner, man, he'll say, he'll laugh because I'll be mumbling something as if, or I'll just say a random thought that's coming from my inner world, and he'll start laughing because he'll be like, am I supposed to know what you're talking about? And it reminds me of that, like, oh, no, 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 no. Yeah, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about, of course, but that, especially in conflict, I think it's a really important thing to remember that we don't read each other's minds. You actually have to share and share what's going on with you if you really want somebody to understand. And yeah, so that's what I think where he was really pointing with that one.
Yeah, and I think that speaks also just again, maybe transparency, authenticity is all wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
All right, leave us with another one, and we can get to where everyone can find your new book.
Let's see. Um, oh, don't use your partner as a punching bag. I love this one.
I think
Because
everyone's been guilty of this at some point, or like
yeah,
a parent, right, or blaming some of your family members.
yeah. So this is about venting, but not over venting. Like maybe just know what your partner's limit is with the amount that they can take. And also using your partner to like, let's say you've had a bad day. It's not your partner's fault that you had a bad day. Don't take it out on your partner when you get home, or realize, oh man, I might need some space for a little while just to regroup, and let go of my bad day. So I don't use my partner as a punching bag, an emotional punching bag, like, where you're not going to be irritable and, get upset with your partner because that becomes a vent, so that's just really practical, isn't it? I mean, none of us want to be a punching bag, and it doesn't feel very good to use somebody as a punching bag either. To take our feelings out on somebody else never feels good.
Yeah. There's never an excuse for it. I remember one time years ago in the corporate world, one of my partners, smashed her car on the way to work and came in and screamed and threw a bottle across the room. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And, she's like, "Well," I go, "I don't care if you lost your house this morning, hit 5 cars. Like, you don't have a right to come in here." Like, but also like what you said about, um, knowing the limits of your partner. This is interesting. We're very different. And especially if we're talking about, straight male, female type of a relationship. Like maybe your alpha guy is not the guy you need to have this half an hour emotional conversation that you can have with your girlfriend because
Yeah.
you're setting yourself up for disappointment too. You're not going to get the kind of care you need, like knowing your own audience. So I like that, knowing the limits of your partner. I know the limits of my partner and I don't exceed them. And I will call, Jane and Jill to go talk about the stuff that they can get into, and if I need to
Yeah.
get into something else, he'll be the guy for that, right?
Yeah. That's a great point.
What was it? What was something? I mean, there's so many books, there's so many insights from your husband. Throughout your years together, what are some of the top ones out of here? Maybe not verbatim, but something that you're like, this principle is like the top one, or this is the one he always, what's the one that really sticks there for you?
Well, there's two that I always think about, and these are things that he said right before he died. One is that the circumstances of life don't make or break you, but they reveal you.
Oh,
That was really powerful for me. I heard that from him very shortly before he died, and I thought of that. And the other one, we were walking up a hill maybe 6 months before he died, and he said, Chris, you know what I love about the human spirit? And I was like, what? And he said, I love that there are people in this world that take their greatest tragedy and they allow it to move them forward in life so that their life has greater meaning than they might have otherwise had. And so those two pieces of wisdom spoke volumes to me in my loss, and I remembered them instantly as
that tears me up.
directives.
It gives me
Yeah.
goosebumps. And I mean, did anyone not like this guy? Really? Like,
No, everybody loved
just
him.
everything
No,
you're
no,
saying,
no.
I'm straight up.
Everybody loved him. I'm not kidding you. Taxi
Yeah.
drivers, store clerks. I mean, he
Yeah.
was an angel. Many people will memorialize the people that they love, but it's hard to find 100 people that will memorialize the same person.
How
He was
wonderful for your
amazing.
children too to carry on his legacy. How are they about you getting out there, best few years and I mean, obviously ever since, but taking over this and moving forward sort of continuously.
Yeah, they're just really proud of me. They feel very proud of me, and they know that he'd be really proud, and yeah, that's it. They're just super proud of me that I've been able to live forward and live on in a way that I have.
Also, that sense of pride you might feel now after being beyond all of the, initial devastation phases of this. What's that like? That must be so rewarding. Like you said, you're living a great life.
Yeah, I feel really blessed in the sense of that it's a privilege and an honor to serve in this capacity. And that's how we've always felt throughout, even in our 30s when Don't Sweat the Small Stuff really took off. Richard was only 35 years old. So, it's always been a privilege and an honor. And it feels even more so now to just know that this body of work has been so relevant to so many people over the years and that it continues to change lives and be relevant is a real honor and a real privilege.
Yeah, and everyone, you can get your daily dose. Listen,
Yeah.
2025 and beyond, you're going to need it. So this is the don't sweat the small stuff every day, right? This
Yep.
is a 365. You can get it on Amazon and everywhere else, but also just give us a website. We'll put everything in the show notes for people to connect with you. But how can we benefit from more of you and your husband's previous work as well?
Yeah, so there's two websites. There would be don'tsweat.com and then there's kristinecarlson.com. And yeah, they're both kind of go back and forth to each other, but kristinecarlson.com has more about my women's retreats and the different things I offer there for women, and don'tsweat.com has more courses on happiness and so forth. So
Can you touch on the women's retreats briefly before, people I'm sure will flock to
yeah,
them, right?
yeah.
But
Well, one of the things I've loved doing for I'd say the last 12 years is hosting women's retreats all over the world. And I have one in Costa Rica coming up in March that I'm doing with the wonderful Alexa Fisher. She's the wish beads lady, the wish lady. And then I'm doing a writing retreat in Mount Shasta, which is for writers. And then I'm doing an Italy retreat in the fall. So, yeah, I love my women's retreats.
I love it. Thank you so much. Is there any just last shots of wisdom you want to throw over the bow before we head out of here?
Well, just don't sweat the small stuff. We are living the big stuff.
That's right. I mean,
Once
it
you're
puts it in
living
context, doesn't it?
yeah, when you're living something big, you know that the small stuff disappears. So, yeah, and just much love to anybody who's going through loss of any kind right now. I know it's hard, and we don't try to make light of, the journey. It's a journey, and I hope that if you're listening and you're going through something, that you have hope that you will get to the another place in yourself and your life at some point. It happens.
It does. It's just sometimes it's a little bit of a waiting game, but you got to hang in there. Thank you so much for your wisdom and all the work that you do. Everybody go get yourself a copy of the 365 Don't Sweat the Small Stuff daily so that you can every day, sometimes people start the new year, first couple of weeks, they're on the mindset kick and then they drop off. Well, if you have the book on the table, all you need to do is bookmark it, turn the page, and that's how you can get started with some mindset work. So thank you so much. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Elle.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit elleruss.com/discounts.